Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Ehrhardt E-V/4. The Ehrhardt E V4 was the most produced German armored car from the First World War. Armored cars were not an entirely new concept in 1914, because the Germans had already built a few prototype armored vehicles in the early 1900s. On the 28th of July 1914, war broke out in Europe. Germany wanted to invade France, but they knew that the French had built a series of fortifications along the Franco-German border, so the Germans wanted to go around the fortresses via Belgium. So on August 4th, German troops moved into Belgium, but they were slowed down by the Belgian hit-and-run tactics, where the Belgians used armored cars to great success. The German General Staff was pressured to place an order for armored cars because of the positive reports of Belgian use of armored cars in the second half of 1914. So that's what they did. In October, the Oberste Heeresleitung, Supreme Army Command, issued a specification for a new model of four-wheel drive armored car. 3 companies were given the task of designing their own armored car. These were Daimler, Ehrhardt and Bussing. The armored cars to be designed had to fulfill the following 15 requirements. An armament of 3 machine guns, one of them being spare. Both guns should be able to fire simultaneously in any direction. Ammunition load out of at least 16,500 rounds. A crew of 8, commander, driver and 6 machine gun operators, later changed to a crew of 10 with 2 extra drivers. Completely armored with a minimum thickness of 5.5 mm excluding roof armor. A maximum weight of crew, armor, armament and ammunition combined of 2,500 kilograms. 2 MGs which weighed 75 kilograms, ammunition 660 kilograms, crew 600 kilograms and armor 1,000 kilograms. The possibility of driving forwards and backward at the same speed without turning the vehicle. A turn-able driver's seat in the middle of the vehicle, not required with a driver in the front and rear. Close-able observation slits for the driver. Machine gun operators should not be hindered by the driver. And four-wheel drive. As good off-road capabilities as possible, therefore only one gear with a short gearing and had to carry wheel belts and ramps. A maximum speed of 40 to 60 km per hour both forwards and backwards. An engine of at least 40 horsepower. Sufficient engine cooling despite covering armor plating. Steel wheels, when possible disc wheels, not steel spoked wheels. Solid rubber tires with armored protection. On both front and rear, 2 acetylene headlamps, 1 movable electric searchlight and 1 electric lighting in the driver's cabin. By the end of 1915, all 3 companies had finished their armored car prototype. The Daimler Model 1915, the Ehrhardt E V4 and the Bussing A5P. The Heinrich Ehrhardt Automobilwerke AG company was an obvious choice for the German army to make its armored cars, because Ehrhardt AG had already built an anti-aircraft gun carrier in 1910. 33 Ehrhardt E V4s were made, 1 in 1915, 12 in 1917 and 20 in 1919. Now we're going to compare the different models. First, the M17 compared to the M15. The M17 vehicles lost 30 cm in length and height, and the armor was increased, the total weight also decreased, and the rear wheels received a large armored box for protection. And now the M19 compared to the M17. The changes were in the direction of simplifying production. Complex headlight protection was replaced by a simple one, all kinds of boxes and entrenching tools were removed. The flaps were replaced by simple covers, the wheels became metal discs and a rotating turret. Now we are going to look at how you can tell the differences between the vehicles. You can always tell when it's the M15 because it doesn't really look like any of the other ones. The biggest differences between the M17 and the M19 is that there is no wheel cover on the M19. The engine was aspired through a slotted front grille and had a gearbox with 4 speeds in both directions. And power was supplied by a single gasoline-fueled power plant delivering 85 horsepower. The Ehrhardt 15 had a length of 5.6 meters, a height of 3 meters and a width of 2 meters. The Ehrhardt 17 and 19 both had a length of 5.3 meters, a height of 2.9 meters and a width of 2 meters. The Ehrhardt 15 weighed 9 metric tons, the Ehrhardt 17 weighed 7.75 metric tons, and the Ehrhardt 19 also weighed 7.75 metric tons. They all had a crew of 8. The Ehrhardt 15 had a top speed of 45 km per hour. The Ehrhardt 17 and 19 had a top speed of 61 km per hour. All vehicles had a range of 250 km. The combined fighting compartment and control compartment were covered by an armored hull in the form of a box made of chrome nickel steel with sloping frontal plates and a sloping roof. The M15 had 7mm frontal armor. The M17 and 19 both had 9mm in the front. The M15 had 5mm on the sides and rear. The M17 and M19 both had 9mm on the sides and rear. The M15 had 5mm on the roof, and the M17 and M19 both had 6mm on the roof. The Ehrhardt 15 was one of the 3 prototype armored vehicles ordered in 1914, delivered in 1915, and tested in 1916. After the first year of combat, the German headquarters issued a new task for armored cars, according to which the vehicles were supposed to become lighter and cheaper to produce. Ehrhardt decided to change their design and built 12 new Ehrhardt 17s in 1917. Both series served on the Eastern Front until the end of 1917, when the Russian Revolution broke out, and then were repatriated to serve as police duty vehicles in major cities. They were found so useful in this new duty that an additional 20 vehicles were ordered in 1919 as the Ehrhardt 19 series. Ehrhardt's armored car arrived for testing by the military a little later than the Daimler Model 1915, in late 1915, and although its tests were carried out simultaneously with the Daimler Model 1915, it reached combat readiness a little later than the Daimler Model 1915. The Ehrhardt E V4 entered the first armored car platoon on the Western Front in mid-March 1916. The platoon consisted of the first modernized captured Minerva armored car and the Ehrhardt E V4 and the Daimler Model 1915. The second Minerva arrived at the unit's disposal on May 8, 1916. After the Bussing A5P arrived in June, the unit became complete and they tried to assign it to combat missions in Alsace. After primarily tests with trips to the front line and firing towards the French, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 1 was transferred to replenishment and requisition of the armored unit. And here the new Romanian front successfully turned up, to which armored cars were sent without regret. By October 12, 1916, the first platoon was successfully equipped with material and combat personnel, which consisted of 4 officers, 15 non-commissioned officers, and 40 privates. The equipment included 3 heavy armored vehicles, the Daimler Model 1915, the Ehrhardt E V4, and the Bussing A5P. 2 light armored vehicles, Minerva, taken as trophies back in 1914, 4 trucks, of which 2 of them were Bussing NAC, and 2 Daimler Horsch, 1 workshop with a trailer on a NAC truck chassis, 3 passenger cars, of which 2 were Wanderer and 1 Minerva, 10 MG08 machine guns, and 1 7.58 cm Minenwerfer AA light mortar. On October 18th, the platoon was transferred to the Romanian front under the command of the 9th Army. After a 120 km march along the highway, the platoon arrived at its location in the Transylvanian mountains. The unit was divided into 3 groups, 1 heavy and 1 light armored car group. The Ehrhardt did not find the pair and acted separately as part of the cavalry corps of General Eberhard von Schmidthoff. Despite the fact that the actions of all armored cars were assigned as positive, all armored vehicles showed very low operational reliability. On November 6, 1916, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 1 was renamed Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Abteilung 1. Ehrhardt remained on the move, conducting reconnaissance as part of the 7th Cavalry Division. On November 12th, the armored car fired and put to fight a Romanian cavalry patrol and 2 infantry companies. In mid-November, the most vulnerable part of the Ehrhardt E V4 broke, the gearbox, and the car, following Bussing and shortly before the Daimler Model 1915, was sent to Germany for major repairs. After the repairs in 1917, the 3 cars were equipped with radio stations. Also in 1917, the German military rolled out a new technical assignment to all 3 companies, according to which they were asked to supply the army with new armored cars. Bussing could not do anything with its big monster. Daimler was busy with work on the new Daimler KD1 artillery tractor, so instead the German command ordered 12 more vehicles from Ehrhardt. The first 2 entered the army on July 17th. The remaining 10 were built and delivered by the end of November. During this time, 5 new platoons were formed. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. 2 of the new armored cars were put in each platoon. The last 2 Ehrhardt 17s were given to Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 1 as reserve vehicles. The new platoons were all sent to different parts of the front from the 14th of September 1917 to the 21st of February 1918. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 2 was sent to Ukraine, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 were sent to Italy, and the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 4 were sent to the Eastern Front, and Zug 5 to the Western Front, Zug 6 to Estonia, and later sent to the Western Front. The first platoon were also sent to Ukraine, just like the second. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr staff included 2 officers, 37 lower ranks, including 4 machine gunners, 2 radio operators, and 11 drivers. The equipment consisted of 2 armored cars, 2 trucks, a passenger car, and a car repair shop. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 were sent to the city of Treviso in Veneto, Italy, in September 1917. During the fighting in Italy, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 captured a lot of Italian Lancia armored cars. The platoon moved to the east in the summer of 1918. In February 1918, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 1 marched from Kovel to Kiev, taking part in its capture. By this time, the unit consisted of the Ehrhardt 15 and 2 Ehrhardt 17s. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 2 consisted of 2 Ehrhardt 17s and the Bussing E-V4, and was stationed around Kiev in Ukraine in 1918, not seen much action, but still had a big task because Kiev is and was a big city. And the platoon were equipped with radio communication. The vehicles also received a camouflage pattern. In November, the platoon moved back to Germany after the armistice. One of the Ehrhardt 17s were used by the Freikorps after the war. The second attack on Kharkov on April 8, 1918, ended disastrously for the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 1. At least 1 Ehrhardt 17 were destroyed, and the Ehrhardt 15 fell into the hands of the Red Army. Another Ehrhardt 17 was also captured by the Red Army. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 was stationed in Rostov in August 1918, patrolling the streets and fighting uprisings. In September, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 was sent to the Western Front. On October 24, 1918, the Oberste Heeresleitung ordered the complete withdrawal of all armored car platoons in the Caucasus region and restationed them in Romania or Ukraine. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 6 was stationed in Tartu, Estonia, from March to September 1918. During this time, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 6 patrolled the streets and fought uprisings. In September, the Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 6 was sent to the Western Front. The Bolsheviks included the Ehrhardt 15 vehicle in one of the armored detachments, which by September 1918 ended up on the Tsaritsyn front, where, during the first attack on Tsaritsyn by the Don army of General Krasnov on September 16th, it fell into the hands of the Whites. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 6 was stationed in Morges in France in October 1918, and the vehicles were captured by the French in November after the armistice. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 4 were part of the 19th Army and served on the Western Front in late 1918. The 4th Platoon's vehicles were confiscated by the French after the armistice. The Panzerkraftwagen Maschinengewehr Zug 3 was stationed in Alsace in late 1918, and after the armistice on November 11, 1918, one of the Ehrhardt 17s from the 3rd Platoon were used by the Freikorps in 1919. After a very active year for the armored cars, the reports showed that the armored cars were not that good out on the front line. They of course also lost an entire platoon to the Russians, but the cars were very good as police cars in the major cities, so that's why they eventually ordered another 20 Ehrhardt E-V4. On February 7th, one Ehrhardt was attacked by 16 Greater Poland insurgents while driving on the road outside Obinki, specifically by the company from Rogoshna, incorporated into the insurgent army Groshenski. The captured Ehrhardt 17 was named in honor of the commander of the Northern Front, Colonel Kazimierz Grudzielski. 1 month later, tensions between the Bolsheviks and the Poles turned into an all-out war, and the Ehrhardt 17 went to the east to fight the Bolsheviks, and after 2 years, the Polish eventually won the war. By September 1919, through the efforts of factories in Novocherkassk and Rostov, the armored units of South Russia were created. The White Russian military knew exactly why they needed armored cars, and they captured the Ehrhardt E-V4 was significantly re-equipped in the workshops of southern Russia. In addition to the machine guns, a Hotchkiss cannon, the 37mm MLE 1885, was installed in the commander's turret. The remaining 5 Maxim machine guns were placed in the fighting compartment. The radiator protection shutters were replaced with armored shields. The Ehrhardt 15 bore a nickname after the commander of the unit that captured it, Colonel Peshmalisvene. The new 20 Ehrhardt 19s were delivered at the end of 1919. Officially, armored cars were supplied to protect the borders of the German state, which became very tense after the defeat in the war. Formerly, the Germans were supposed to hand over all the armored vehicles to the Allies, but when the British and French were worried about the threat of creating a communist state, and the Allied Commission turned a blind eye to the armored cars, especially since they were not impressed by what they saw. Basically, armored cars ended up in service with the state police and Freikorps, volunteer units from demobilized military personnel, whose main opponents were the communists. Both the Ehrhardt 17 and Ehrhardt 19 were used extensively by the Freikorps in 1920. The Ehrhardt 19 also entered the new army, the Reichswehr, in 1920. When the young republic was simultaneously shaken by the Cap Putsch and workers' uprisings, and although the Reichswehr tried to maintain neutrality, at least in the Cap Putsch, and in suppressing the workers, the Freikorps acted very harshly. The Allies did not like the current situation, and on the eve of the entry of the French troops into northern Germany, all armored vehicles were handed over to the Allied Commission, or unarmed, so now the Ehrhardt were not allowed to have any machine guns. On September 20th, 1920, the 2nd Infantry Division in Poznan, the Ehrhardt 17 captured by the Poles, takes part in the 3rd Silesian Uprising, bearing the name Upper Silesia. During the Silesian Uprising, it was commanded by a Frenchman called Ensign Forestier. After serving in the wars on the territory of the former Russian Empire, the Ehrhardt 15, along with the Ehrhardt 17, was at the disposal of the Red Army. It is mentioned in the annual reports of the 2nd Armored Tank and Automobile Plant in Moscow for the 1925-26 operational year. After repairs at BTAC, Ehrhardt 15 eventually continued to serve in the 21st Perm Rifle Division of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics Armed Forces. In 1928, the Ehrhardt 15 still served in the Red Army during training maneuvers, but was soon phased out by newer models. The Ehrhardt 17 served in the Polish Army until 1928 as part of the 2nd Armored Car Squadron from Poznan, and later the 2nd Armored Car Squadron from Warsaw. The Ehrhardt E-V4 were used by the German police until 1939. The last Ehrhardt E-V4 was likely scrapped in the early years of the Second World War, and none survive today. But the Russians built a replica in 2014. It was shown for the first time in the historic Civil War Festival in Kolomenskoye, Russia. The Poles also built a replica. In the late 2010s, it was used for the first time in a short film from February 7, 2019, exactly 100 years after the Poles captured the Ehrhardt 17 in 1919.